The Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Like the Nintendo Entertainment System, but super. One of the greatest consoles of all time, Nintendo's 16-bit powerhouse was home to some of the finest video games ever made. It was also involved with the epic 16-bit console war with the Sega Mega Drive, sold over 49 million units worldwide, and was even subject of an all-time classic Simpsons moment.
Hi, Super Nintendo Chalmers!
Truly, it's a legendary piece of hardware, and contributed hugely to Nintendo's storied history and the company's continued relevance in the gaming world today. Its legendary status is mostly down to its iconic back catalogue, being home to the likes of Super Mario World, Star Fox, Donkey Kong Country, and The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. The SNES was blessed with a whole host of titles that anyone with even a passing interest in video games could recognise. The thing is, we don't care about any of those. Today we're taking our picks and lanterns and returning to the gaming mines once again in an effort to bring you some of the console's most uncelebrated and overlooked gems. Come on everyone, get your spelunking hats on. We're going really deep this time. I'm Ashton from TripleJump, and here are 10 hidden gems for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Number 10. Pocky Rocky. If I told you about a sequel to the Taito arcade game called Kiki Kai Kai that featured a Shinto shrine maiden and her tanuki companion, you'd probably assume we're talking about a hidden gem that never made it out of Japan. Amazingly, Pocky Rocky came west in 1993 and gave players the chance to enjoy a polished, top-down scrolling shooter with a mystical Far Eastern spin. While most Western gamers were used to super macho examples of the genre, like Mercs or Chaos Engine, Pocky Rocky took that well-known gameplay style and created something completely different. The muscle-bound heroes are replaced by Shrine Maiden Pocky and adorable Tanuki Rocky, and the usual enemies are switched out for a band of cute goblins who are under a mysterious spell. Despite reviewers praising great graphics, cool weather effects, and a fantastic two-player experience, Pocky Rocky slid into obscurity fairly quickly, unable to shine in a sea of all-time classic contemporaries. The series did receive an unexpected continuation in 2022, however, with Pocky Rocky reshrined. So, if you were a fan of the Shrine Maiden and Tanuki connection, then there's no longer any excuse to not get back on the goblin blasting action. What are you waiting for? Another remake? Number 9. Do-Re-Mi Fantasy, Milon's Doki Doki Adventure. Despite being one of the prettiest looking platformers on the SNES, Do-Re-Mi Fantasy didn't make it to the Western world. This whimsical Hudson Soft developed romp features Milon, a young boy who is tasked with rescuing his fairy friends and saving the forest from an evil wizard who has stolen all of the music. Ah, it's so sweet, I can almost feel my teeth rotting. Hidden behind all of the fluffy cuteness is a well-crafted, chilled-out platform adventure in which the player blows bubbles at enemies and attempts to reclaim a series of musical instruments that have been spirited away by the evil wizard's strongest minions. While Do-Re-Mi Fantasy doesn't do anything particularly inventive, it does provide a delightful gameplay experience for those after something with a more upbeat vibe. Come to think of it, Do-Re-Mi Fantasy's super saccharine themes might have been one of the reasons it never came to the West. Whilst we do like our cutesy platformers, as proven by the likes of Rainbow Isles and Kirby, we also often like our games with plenty of grit. They should have just reskinned Do-Re-Mi Fantasy with aliens, robots, zombies and the like. It would have sold like hotcakes. Number 8. Phantom 2040. Whilst Phantom 2040 was also released on the Mega Drive, the fact that this 1995 action-adventure title has a bit of a Metroidvania vibe makes the SNES version especially interesting. This is because it had to contend with Super Metroid and Super Castlevania 4, a couple of stellar titles from the franchises that codified the genre. When you look at it that way, poor Phantom 2040 didn't stand much of a chance. The game is based on the animated series of the same name, which took the purple-clad comic book crime fighter and put him into a dark, futuristic setting. In the game, the titular Phantom must race against the evil Rebecca Madison to locate the fabled Black Panther. The Phantom wants to rescue the Panther, but Rebecca wants to use its blood to restore her husband's brainwaves somehow. Look, I don't quite get the science behind it either, but let's just roll with it, alright? While Phantom 2040 doesn't quite reach the level of presentation and finesse as the aforementioned Metroidvanias, it's still a great adventure set in a fascinating world that features huge levels, multiple weapons, and numerous endings. It's a great way to live out your futuristic, crime-fighting, animal-protecting, and skin-tight purple spandex-wearing fantasies. We've all had them, right? Number 7. The Fireman. Playing similarly to a top-down shooter, this 1994 SNES release gave players a fire hose instead of a rocket launcher, and tasked them with dampening raging infernos while rescuing civilians. The Fireman was developed by Human Entertainment, who had previously released SOS, which saw players helping survivors of a sinking ship. A wholesome developer then, who apparently favoured violence-eschewing games where the focus was on saving lives. Both SOS and The Fireman are fairly hidden gem-worthy, but we had to choose the latter game for this list, mostly because it's cool to watch firefighter Daniel putting out fires with an axe. In the game, players take control of Pete, who is kitted out with a hose with various firing modes and special fire-extinguishing bombs. The aim is to move through the burning locations, avoiding damage from flames or extreme heat, and reaching various boss fires that need to be put out in specific ways. Any rescued civilians will get Pete a health boost, infusing him with the will to heroically carry on through the impenetrable heat. Pete's cool and all, but we really like Daniel. This hyper-competent sidekick has zero fear and provides axe-based backup through thick and thin. I bet he's a great wingman too. Number 6, Wild Guns. One of the truly niche video game genres out there is what's known as the shooting gallery, kind of like a light gun game without the peripheral. Shooting gallery games allow players to control the protagonist in the foreground as they take out targets in the background, all while dodging attacks and incoming projectiles. An example that was commonly seen in the arcades back in the day is Tato's Cabal, and another example is the underappreciated SNES sci-fi western Wild Guns. Originally released in 1994, Natsume's Wild Guns has some stellar production values, especially considering it was developed on a meager budget to a strict time limit and primarily by a team of just 3 people. The game lets you step into the rooting-tooting boots of either Clint or Annie and take on outlaws, robots, and more in outrageous shooting gallery action. Wild Guns manages to combine loads of cool Wild West tropes with science fiction aspects to create a visually appealing and action-packed experience that's still fun to play today. Unfortunately, thanks to Sunset Riders, Wild Guns isn't even the most prominent Western-themed SNES game. Those adventurous prospectors who did give it a try though, they definitely struck gold. Number 5, Bahamut Lagoon. Another great title that never made its way out of Japan, Squaresoft's Bahamut Lagoon is part of the developer's stellar collection of SNES RPGs, joining the likes of The Secrets of Mana, Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG, and the recently revitalized Live Alive. Bahamut Lagoon, however, comes with an added tactical element for that bit of extra strategic spice. The adventure is set across a series of floating continents known as lagoons, and tells the admittedly familiar tale of a majestic kingdom being invaded by a cruel empire. As a heroic general of said kingdom, the player's task is to command their troops in an effort to fight off the empire, and this is achieved through clever use of turn and grid-based battle systems. As well as regular troops, the player has access to dragons, powerful units that dominate the battlefield but only obey basic commands. It's kind of like when you get a really high-level event Pokemon that could wipe the floor with most enemies but won't do what it's told. The good news here, though, is that you can increase the dragon's loyalty by feeding them food that they enjoy, and items, accessories, armor, and even weapons are all on the menu. Now, you wouldn't get the same outcome from trying to feed a sword to your level 45 shiny shaman. Number 4, the Ninja Warriors. A lot of 90s kids wanted to be a ninja when they grew up. This pipe dream was propagated by the media's frankly unrealistic portrayal of ninjas as magic-wielding superhuman warriors, or, mutant amphibians. Despite the sheer impossibility of becoming a ninja as portrayed in cartoons and video games, I do like to think that at least some of those starry-eyed kids made it. For the rest of us, however, there are plenty of ninja-themed games that let us live out our ninjutsu fantasies from the safety of our own living room. And the Ninja Warriors, a barely remembered SNES beat-em-up, is one such example. It featured chunky, bright graphics that rivaled arcade games of the time, and 3 android ninja protagonists to choose from. Yes, that's right, these aren't just ninjas, they're robot ninjas. The gameplay of the Ninja Warriors combines the punching, kicking, and grappling styles of Streets of Rage and Final Fight with single-plane linear progression. Reviewers were suitably impressed, with the only criticisms being levelled at the lack of 2-player mode and the fact that it could be a bit easy. As someone who is both lonely and rubbish at games, our writer is absolutely fine with both of those weaknesses. Number 3, Dolucky-no Kusayakiyu. The last of the Japan-only games on our list, Dolucky-no is a corporate-sponsored, ultra-adorable baseball game, and a delightful oddity that's worth playing even if you're not a baseball fan. The whole thing is in Japanese, so the details of the game's plot are difficult to pinpoint, but basically, there's an animal-based tournament going on, and each team's kit is festooned with logos for one of the products in the refreshing repertoire of the Coca-Cola company. We've got cats wearing cola colours, chickens decked out in Diet Coke uniforms, canine Fanta fanatics, and Sprite-branded elephants. But behind all this cuteness and capitalism, there's a very solid baseball game with some pretty neat gameplay mechanics. Dolucky-no looks nice too, with some clever use of Mode 7 and lots of characterful animation, and the whole thing is accompanied by a toe-tapping soundtrack. Easily as good as any of its more serious contemporaries, Dolucky-no character and sense of fun gives it the edge over more serious baseball games, so it's definitely worth a try if you like your virtual sports to have a little extra something. If you do play it though, do so while drinking a Pepsi. You know, just to stick it to the man. Number 2, Robotrek. Another lovely SNES RPG that got overshadowed by some of the more well-known classics. This one, at least, made it to America. At first glance, Robotrek has that familiar Chrono Trigger style, complete with a young red-headed hero. However, Robotrek sets itself apart from the aforementioned time-travelling epic with, you guessed it, robots! No, wait. Chrono Trigger has robots too. Look, these robots are different, I swear. Just let me explain. In Robotrek, or Slapstick if you want to get Japanese title about this, you step into the shoes of the son of a famous inventor and must stop a sinister organisation known as the Hackers from gaining access to a time-controlling artifact. The protagonist does this by inventing robots to fight for him, and consistently devising and combining items to make the robots stronger. The result is a game that appears to be a traditional 16-bit turn-based RPG, but that has a really cool customizational robot mechanic at its core. Robotrek sold poorly when it was released and received only a lukewarm reception from reviewers, who praised its unique approach but had issues with its graphics and presentation. We here at TripleJump, however, believe that Robotrek got a raw deal and would like to recognise its cool and unusual approach to an established genre. It definitely should not be on the scrap heap. And number 1, King Arthur's World. This interesting take on Arthurian legend was released by Dolucky-no in 1992. Labelled as a side-scrolling strategy game, King Arthur's World appears to successfully combine aspects of Lemmings and cannon fodder into a coherent, addictive medieval whole. What results is a delightfully unique SNES strategy title that not only gave players a sense of epic battles in medieval times, but tested their thinking skills too. In the game, players take on the role of the titular monarch of questionable historical origin, and the aim of each stage is to get the Excalibur-wielding hero from his tent at the start of the level to his goal at the end. This will often take him past traps and enemy fortifications. As kingly as he is, poor Arthur can't do all of it alone, so the player must summon various troop types in order to defeat enemies and evade hazards by using their various skills and abilities. Only King Arthur's survival is essential to complete the level, meaning the troops summoned to aid their liege are completely expendable, and it's this disregard for the lives of various player-controlled sprites that reminds us of the likes of Lemmings and cannon fodder. Seriously, 90s strategy and puzzle games can be absolutely heartless when they wanted to be.